Digital estates are growing, and so are the volume and sophistication of cyber attacks. Security operations teams are increasingly challenged to protect assets across distributed environments, analyze the growing quantity of security data, and prioritize response to real threats. The problem? Traditional SIEM solutions are costly to operate, slow to scale, and generate an overwhelming number of alerts, all of which are major obstacles to effective security. But there's a solution. Azure Sentinel, a cloud-native SIEM for your entire enterprise. Azure Sentinel helps eliminate infrastructure setup and management complexity, saving you major costs. It scales automatically to meet your dynamic needs. With just a few clicks, you can collect, correlate, and analyze data at cloud scale across all users, devices, applications, and infrastructure, both on-premises and in multiple clouds. It empowers you with insights from Microsoft's global security operations and threat intelligence, informed by analyzing trillions of signals every day. And it arms your entire team with intelligent, role-based tools so they can focus on what's important: protecting your organization. With built-in AI and machine learning, you can improve detection, hunting, response, and potential incidents, reducing false positives and alert fatigue by more than 90%. You can identify compromised users and entities with behavior analytics and simplify investigation for the entire incident. And with integrated playbooks, you can automate and orchestrate a majority of tasks, simplifying operations and accelerating threat response. While security threats continue to grow, Microsoft is dedicated to keeping you one step ahead. Modernize your security operations with Azure Sentinel.
Hey everybody, it's Jay. Welcome back to AzureFunBytes. It's been a couple weeks, I know, but it's the holiday. It was the holiday season. We got through it. We all are here. It's 2022. It is a new year. It's time for new shows. My name is Jay Gordon. I am always here as your host to give you all the information, products, services, and people that make up an incredibly great Azure experience, the delightful Azure experience, if you will. So I really enjoyed that little intro video, and I think it helps set us up for what we're going to be talking about today. It's so important to talk about security and the concepts that help protect our IT operations and our applications. And in order to do that, we have to find different methodologies to be able to scoop up all the data that's created along the way and make some decisions on how to handle whether it's intrusion detection, users that have been created, auditing, things like that. We want to make sure that we've spent our time getting things right when it comes to being able to put out something that people are going to be using. So we are here on Learn TV. And I want to remind you, as always, before I introduce our guest, that we have a poll. You can always take the poll along the way. I'd love to hear from you. I want to know a little bit about whether you've used some of these services before. And today, we'd love to hear whether or not you've worked with security and event management in your IT infrastructure. So go to aka.ms/learntv. Now, to help me along the way today, I've got a great guest, someone that was kind enough to come and be part of this, and that would be Rod Trent. He is a senior cloud security advocate. How you doing, Rod?
I'm fine, Jay. How are you? How about yourself? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I'm doing good. It's another Thursday. I haven't done one of these in a couple weeks, and I've actually really missed the opportunity to be able to talk with not just my guests, but all the people in the community that take part. They all seem to really appreciate this information, and I'm so glad you're here to help give some new stuff. We've kind of touched upon Sentinel before, but we haven't really done a deep dive in here. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, Rod. But what I really wanted to do, just because I wanted to kind of get everything set up and let people know a little bit about yourself. And my question is, how'd you get here?
How did I get here? That's actually an extremely good question. I'm glad you asked. I've actually been, in terms of other folks, I've been at Microsoft probably relatively short time. I started with Microsoft in April, on tax day, April 15th, 2019. But since then, kind of hit the ground running. One of the first things that I accomplished at Microsoft was delivering Microsoft Sentinel workshops, right? And ever since I started that, that's literally the only thing that I have done since. Not just the workshops, but work with a number of customers. Before this role that I'm in currently, I worked in our services org as a customer engineer and also a security CSA. Worked with lots and lots of customers doing lots and lots of really cool things with Microsoft Sentinel.
Very, very cool. It's a great opportunity today to remind people that Microsoft really believes in this zero trust initiative in how we handle applications. And while we think about, the importance of identity and access management, we also need to concern ourselves with the auditing of what happens along the way. And from what I know, Sentinel, and I'll give you a chance to kind of talk to us a little bit more about it. It's really there to give you a single pane of glass to look at your security posture and then provide you with information about what's going on and lead you to some remediations. Am I right?
Yeah, so zero trust is a mindset, right, that your organization needs to take. But zero trust can't do everything for you because that's your policies, your procedures that you implement within an organization. Something like Microsoft Sentinel or a tool like Microsoft Sentinel, while it does provide that central pane of glass for the entire environment, what I like to refer to Microsoft Sentinel, I don't know if you've ever watched one of those TV shows where they're digging for gold. They use these massive pieces of equipment to dig the earth out, and they're looking for gold. But what actually helps them find those little nuggets of value is what's called a sluice box. I don't know if you've seen this. They run water through it. It gets the dirt out of the way and produces the gold. That's almost exactly what Microsoft Sentinel is in respect to it's the last mile of security. It monitors the environment for the things that zero trust in your policies can't always address. It's going to capture all of that stuff, like that sluice box, that your tools, your policies, and the other things and mechanisms that you use are going to miss.
Gotcha. And so I brought up this image because I thought it was a really great way to kind of kick off the big use cases for Sentinel, and I'll ask you a little bit more about specifics. But what we're looking to do is collect information about your security data across the enterprise. You're looking to detect threats so that we're able to mitigate them. We're investigating incidents like we would in almost any operations situation. We want to look at those incidents and then we want to respond to them. So we've got this kind of like circular path to take when it comes to creating a secure and audited environment for our IT infrastructure.
Yeah, so those are kind of the primary pillars of a tool like Microsoft Sentinel. Microsoft Sentinel obviously is not the only tool like this on the market. We are actually probably the newest, the most recent. As I mentioned earlier, we released in September of 2019 publicly. Obviously, since then, because of how our services work and function and improvements are made, it's leaps and bounds ahead of where it started. But at the same time, those are the primary pillars. So it has to do those four things, right? We need to collect data. We need to investigate. We need to look through that data, need to sift through it. We need to supply the capability to be able to remediate if there are actual threats found in the environment. So yeah, absolutely. It meets every one of that criteria. Plus it does a heck of a lot more.
Very cool. And if you want to be able to, you, the viewer, want to take some time to do some introductory education around this, there is a really great Microsoft Learn module. I actually, took this one yesterday, and it gave me some kind of background on what exactly it is to utilize this service to be able to secure my solutions. So I really recommend head over to this URL after the show. We want to finish what we're doing today and take this opportunity to get free education on Microsoft Learn. I think it's a really great thing. So the next kind of thing I wanted to talk to you about are security operations in Azure. What would you say is the role of the SOC, or the Security Operations Center, for applications deployed in Azure?
Well, so the SOC generally is a formal team, Security Operations Center, right, that manages the security, or not necessarily manages, but monitors the security of everything that's deployed within the environment, not just on-prem, which absolutely needs to be done, but also, if you're a multi-cloud organization, whether it's Azure, whether it's GCP, whether it's AWS, it doesn't matter. Wherever your resources exist, the SOC needs to have that capability to be able to monitor what's going on there, whether it's user activity or application or service activity, access to those things. That's where the SOC kind of fits in that organization, being able to kind of have that purview or that overview of everything that goes on.
Very cool. And I want to just give a shout out here to one of our viewers who said, Azure Sentinel saved my back, or Microsoft Sentinel as it's known now, saved my back more than one time implementing a SIEM in a short time that was needed. So yeah, that's one of the great things about here is people in those security operations centers, they're able to use a service that's managed. It's already there for you to start working with. And that being said, Rod, I know you've got some slides to show us. So if you're ready, I will bring up your deck and I'll give you an opportunity to kind of chat with us a little bit about the big who, what, and when.
Absolutely. And like most of our customers, I'm not a huge fan of slides. So I only have like 6 that I want to go through, but it's only to kind of set the stage for the demos, for what I essentially want to talk about today. Okay. So understand that I'm not a big demo guy, and I'm not a big slide guy. In fact, most of my slide decks, people yell at me and they hate me because it's like one slide and they'll talk for 2 hours. I won't talk for 2 hours today, I promise. But I think there's some things that we kind of need to get through to kind of set the stage about what I'm talking about, because we've talked about Sentinel. We've talked about these SIEMs or SIMs, whatever you want to call them, talked about these types of tools. But Microsoft Sentinel exists for specific reasons. And one of those is that we identified as a Microsoft that uses those same tools as our customers have used a lot of inefficiencies. To me, so here's our overview. Okay, so here's what I want to go through today during our time together. These are the areas I want to highlight and cover. Okay, so efficiency is a big thing of mine, and that's a big reason why I'm so enamored and so in love with Microsoft Sentinel. That's why I've done this for almost 3 years. Okay, the ability to provide for security monitoring, investigation, and remediation, and do it all in an efficient way is a huge win, literally for everyone. Efficiency is key to big companies, obviously, right? And Microsoft Sentinel is absolutely designed to provide for those enormous multi-tiered environments. But efficiency is critically key to small companies, right? By utilizing the efficiencies built into Microsoft Sentinel, small companies don't have to skimp on security, all right? I've worked with customers with hundreds of locations and hundreds of security people, but I've also worked with customers that have a single office with single operations person who's responsible for security and everything else, right? I'm sure there's people listening in now, they feel like that person, right? Microsoft Sentinel works just as well for those customers, all right? Because of, Jay, what? Because of efficiency.
There you go. Yes, your key word here.
Yeah, we're going to get that by the end of this, I promise you, all right? So that's good information, right? But let's not just take my word for it. I can tell you all day, yeah, by Microsoft, we do all this cool stuff. Let's look at why efficiency in the Security Operations Center and this SOC is important, right?
Okay.
Every solution that we have, that Microsoft has, started with a problem. We didn't just one day wake up and let's create Excel. There was a need that existed. So what's our problem? What are we trying to fix here? All right, big scary slide. I promise it's going to slide through here. I'm going to talk here for a second. So let's take a quick minute to set this stage, right? Why do we need efficiency in security? Will efficiency compromise security, or will it bolster it, right? What's our hope? What's our goal? What's our nirvana when it comes to security operations? And is there truly a solution that can deliver the promise of better security through this improved efficiency without compromising that security at all? Okay, that's our hope. That's our goal. Okay, so here's something that I absolutely truly believe. Efficiency, or let's just call it the lack of efficiency, is a barrier to security. All right, I'm gonna preach this here. You're gonna believe me. We need to develop a modern response to security threats based on efficiency. All right, we are at a point, and I hope you can agree with me at this. We're in 2022, right? Brand new year, 2022. We're at a point in technology where the features and tools should accommodate our requirements for this, right? We ask our tools to do something, they should be able to do it. As a security analyst or security team that is actively hunting or investigating threats in the environment, a lot of people know this, you're on the clock. Somebody's beating down your door. What's going on? Why? Where's this intrusion, right? Things must happen quickly. Must get to the point of remediation as soon as possible, because as we've seen, right, or heard in news reports, or obviously some of us have actually experienced this firsthand, right? One intrusion can lead to the next. One compromised account, for example, could lead to the next and the next, and so on until the entire organization is compromised and data is stolen, or the business is just halted completely, right?
We don't want to damage our reputation based on that either, because as a business, the security of our customers' data is just important. It's imperative here.
Absolutely. Well, and customers agree, and they believe that too. And that's why a lot of our customers put their trust in us, because they know that that's what we promote, right? So based on, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but a few people are, recent surveys and reports, and taking into account what we know about most of today's tools, right? It's been determined that the average company needs 162 hours to detect, triage, and contain a breach. And if you're doing the math in your head, that's actually 6 3/4 days. All right. So let's break this number down so we can get a better understanding of the situation. And again, is a personal belief of mine, what our biggest threat to security is, it's not complacency, it's inefficiency, it's efficiency. So, all right, the average organization takes 120 hours to detect an attack. When you think about it in terms of days, that's 5 days. That seems like a heck of a long time. All right, it takes 5 hours to triage, or rather to determine if we need to do something about what we've detected. All right, 6 hours to investigate. After we decide to do something, now we kind of have to figure out the extent of the damage and what we need to do about it, right? And then it takes, on average, 31 hours over another day to contain it, right? There's our 162 hours. That seems pretty interesting, pretty regular, but that's kind of the norm. To me, that's a little bit scary. Knowing what I do know about Microsoft Sentinel, that's absolutely scary. Most security folks probably have heard of this 1-10-60 rule, all right? But if not, and for those that are listening in or watching that are not cyber folks, this is how this goes. Not long ago, this 1-10-60 rule was proposed as our goal. I think this was around 2012, something like this. So it's been a while. Not originally a hard and fast rule that could be enacted immediately, because we didn't have the technology to do that. But it was a goal, right? So we should be able to get to this point as soon as our tools and technologies improve enough to let us get there, or close enough at least to kind of show that we're making progress. The idea is that the most cyber prepared organizations should aim to detect an intrusion in under a minute, perform a full investigation under 10 minutes, and eradicate the adversary from the environment in under an hour, in order to effectively, kind of combat whatever that cyber threat is. Understand it?
Efficiency.
Efficiency, you're getting it, right? Hence, this is our 1-10-60 rule, right? Based on what we just discussed, that 162 hours number, this is kind of a difference, quite a difference, wouldn't you say? Right? I mean, based on what we thought we knew, right? Doesn't that seem almost unobtainable? This 1 hour and 11 minutes, 71 minutes, right?
It's tough.
It is sort of pie in the sky thinking. It's like a Microsoft salesperson or marketing person coming into your organization and say, we can do all this stuff, right?
Mhm.
Okay. What this tells me, when you look at these comparisons, these differences, that our tools and processes are absolutely broken and they haven't evolved like we thought they would, right? Tells me that the tools actually have created the problem. It tells me that our tools themselves have become the actual blockers to our security, right?
The cure being worse than the actual disease itself, if you will.
You're with me. That's awesome. All right. So if I take a step back and review operations from an analyst perspective, put myself in that role, right? This list here are the things that absolutely must be done each day to fulfill and enhance security operations for an organization. All right. We can go through the list. I'm not going to jump through all that. These are part of a standard SOC workflow. We talked about those 4 pillars of things that a tool must do. Okay. This is part of that. Part of the normal daily operations, from triage to identifying false positives. However, let's jump back again. Consider again that 162 hours. All right. If SOCs are focused only on their reactive, right, this stuff either gets overlooked, forgotten, or even worse, discontinued completely. All right. This stuff is absolutely equally important. If you don't do this stuff, your reaction time, that where your focus is, that stuff you're focusing on, is dismal. Right? I can't tell you the number of customers that I've worked with that have just literally stopped doing the necessary stuff because the number of alerts of potential issues have overrun their organization, or overrun their teams. And the problem was the tool, right? The tool was bloated, used legacy architecture, was hard to maintain, hadn't evolved in years, and actually created bad habits for the team. Okay, these other tools, I don't like to reference them by name, are competitors. I just affectionately call them just not Microsoft. Okay.
Sure.
Best way to put it: if your software hasn't evolved to help your customers manage security from a modern perspective, you're just not Microsoft Sentinel. Okay. This list, which I'm going to demo here in a little bit, can be done efficiently with Microsoft Sentinel, so the tool itself is not the barrier to security. All right. So my approach to discussion topics like this that we're discussing are always based on working with our customers. It's not something I make up. All right. Fortunately, I can make up all kinds of things. Right. So I glean a lot of knowledge working with a large number of customers, and based on, admittedly, an OCD of mine, this whole efficiency thing, I want to solve their complaints, particularly when it comes to the topic of efficiency. Again, talked earlier, I'm so enamored with Microsoft Sentinel, it never gets boring because there's so much going on here from an efficiency standpoint. It just literally, it feeds me. Okay. This list, okay, are some of the complaints I've heard and captured from working with our customers, right? I've written these things down. How do you fix this? How do you do this with the Microsoft Sentinel? Many of you watching or listening in probably see this list, and it's something that you're intimately familiar with. You've written this stuff down yourself. Why can't my tool do this, right? This list was developed based on the customer's knowledge of working with their existing legacy SIEMs and security tools, right? Most generally, those tools have been historically on-premises software and services. Those tools have created bad habits for security folks, and a lot of times those security folks don't even know it. Right. Sadly, and I've seen this multitude of times, they actually start pointing fingers at each other and blaming each other for their security woes, when in fact it was the tool. Those customers that I've worked with that have migrated to Microsoft Sentinel from whatever solution that they have, they were almost gobsmacked immediately because it's so easy to stand up, the efficiency that's built in. Obviously, at that point, some start cursing their old vendor and saying, hey, it costs too much money, blah, blah, blah. But to the customer's credit, they literally had no idea what was going on until they tried something else, until they tried Microsoft Sentinel, okay? Obviously, as we move to the cloud, Azure itself, the cloud, helps customers realize additional efficiency, which is what Microsoft Sentinel is built on. But specifically for our discussion, I want to focus on these pain points, this list, okay, on how we can improve even those kind of mundane and manual processes still, all right? So the bottom line is that focus on the right things, the correct things for security environment is being pulled away from our security folks because of these inefficient areas, because their tool is inefficient in these areas, right? Okay, almost to the demo part. Microsoft Sentinel already provides some automated functionality. A lot of customers, they start to get interested in Microsoft Sentinel. They're like, oh, it's got playbooks, it's got automation, this is great. But that's like kind of like the facing part of our automation. There's some other things from an efficiency standpoint that happen in the back end that customers can take advantage of. The most prominent, most glaring are the examples that I want to highlight as part of our remaining discussion, okay? But understandably, there's plenty more. I have delivered workshops every week for, I don't know, like a year, and all of those workshops were like 4 days or more, right? So there's a lot that's built into this thing. Our time today is like an hour. So in the time we have today, let's focus on these primary areas of Microsoft Sentinel that provide the most immediate and most glaring value for efficiency. And be honest, I'm not going to focus on everything that's already existing. I'm going to focus on the newer areas. Okay, understanding that Microsoft Sentinel was released publicly again in September 2019, and since then has seen significant updates constantly. Like any Azure service, there's new features and enhancements released at breakneck speed. If there's anything that you can blame Microsoft for, it's releasing features and updates too quickly, providing too much value, I guess. You'll see as I walk through these primary areas that Microsoft Sentinel works similarly to the tools that customers are probably already familiar with. However, each area has been given deliberate and intentional focus for improvements over those existing legacy tools. A lot of customers don't realize this, but at Microsoft, we actually use those same tools our customers have used ourselves, okay? Microsoft Sentinel exists today in part in the way Microsoft Sentinel is presented, just literally based on those gaps that we found in those same tools. So a lot into the development, yeah.
And that leads me to a great question, is can Microsoft Sentinel integrate with other Microsoft security tools? So like Defender or something like that?
So yeah, that's actually a really good question, a really good story. Our Defender products, customers should be aware at this point that we've done some rebranding. At the beginning of this, there was a video about Azure Sentinel. There was a question about Azure Sentinel. However, it's now Microsoft Sentinel. We have rebranded all of our Defender type or security type products, right? So it's now Microsoft Sentinel. Our Defender products have a Defender nomenclature along with whatever focus it is, like Defender for Endpoint, Defender for 365, Defender for Office, and all that good kind of stuff. Our first party sources, our security tools, we have a really good story there because customers can stand up Microsoft Sentinel, enable the connection between that existing console, use Microsoft Sentinel as that centralized console for all security within the environment, and it's free, right? Connecting those alerts from Defender for Endpoint, for Office 365, or what have you, those first-party services, you connect that to Microsoft Sentinel, it's absolutely free for that ingestion, right? Anytime you move data from anywhere, whether it's on-prem to cloud or other clouds to cloud, it's going to cost something, right? It's just the fact of life. So this is huge from a cost standpoint. For those organizations that are still using those not Microsoft tools, it's costing them a lot of money. By just taking advantage of this opportunity, it's going to save them a lot of money. But of course, that's not the full story. Microsoft, obviously, we do a very good job with our own services and our own products and things like that, right? We know how to centralize and consolidate all that stuff. But Microsoft Sentinel also works with other things on-prem, any device, any service or application you have on premises, any other cloud. You can connect.
Wow, so that answers the next question, though.
There you go. I was way ahead of this one.
So Microsoft Sentinel doesn't just work with Microsoft products and clouds. You can go across the spectrum of on-prem, private cloud, public cloud. Is that right?
That's correct. That image that you showed right at the beginning about those 4 pillars, that top one was collect, right? We're collecting data. This type of tool, yep, there it is. This type of tool, if we're going to do anything and do it well within this space, Microsoft within this space, within the security organization or industry, we have to provide that pillar. And as a customer, you don't want to choose a Microsoft security platform and just focus on Microsoft products. That's cool. It'd be awesome if every customer in the world only used Microsoft products, but that's not the case. Everybody uses what provides for their business, and we understand that. One of the primary reasons why we changed the name of Azure Sentinel to Microsoft Sentinel is because we're trying to shed that platform specific theory or idea that customers have. Microsoft Sentinel allows you to connect anything from anywhere. And if a customer can't do that, they're missing something, missing the view or that capability to look into those devices, services, and applications that they have deployed in their organization. And if you're missing one thing, you have at least one security hole in your operations, right? So yeah, absolutely. Microsoft Sentinel is what I call a platform. It's almost like Space Lab, right? You have Space Lab and all those countries come up and connect to it, right? And we all use that one Space Lab, or at least we used to. I don't know if that's still the case. But Microsoft Sentinel is the same thing. Connect everything here. Data flows into Microsoft Sentinel, and then Microsoft Sentinel uses its intelligence to let you know if there are issues within your environment.
Great. So we've got through some of our beginning questions, and I think I've got one more for you before I'd like you to go into your demo, which is what can be automated in Microsoft Sentinel.
That is an awesome question. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Like I said, one of the things that customers think of when they first start looking at Microsoft Sentinel is this automation piece, right? So a lot of their tools, some of them don't have automated capabilities, being able to automate some kind of normal operations around security. Some of them have add-ons from other vendors, right? And when you deal with, multitude of vendors, there's that whole viability and tug of war between the different vendors. It's something wrong with this tool. No, it's, they blame each other. And then some have seen the value of this automation piece and have built it in over the past 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. So it's still kind of an add-on, but it's integrated with the product. Some have done it through acquisition, what have you. From day one, based on Microsoft using those other tools, that was one of the gaps that we identified. We knew that this type of tool needed to have automation built in for our customers to use on day one. It's not an add-on. It's not something that you pay extra for, right? We have automation built into Microsoft Sentinel. Microsoft Sentinel is built on some existing successful services within Azure. We didn't have to recreate the entire wheel, right? So we'll talk about this here shortly when we set up Microsoft Sentinel, but it's built on some elastic data storage, right? Utilizing the power of the cloud. The automation piece is built on our logic apps. Anybody that's worked with Azure knows about logic apps. There's one thing that turns a logic app into a playbook, which is what we call our automation in Microsoft Sentinel. There's also some other automated capability that we have in there. Particularly for the automation, what we call automation rules, which hopefully as we get through the demo, we'll be able to talk about a little bit, but we'll see.
Sure.
But yeah, automation is absolutely built into this. Consider this is kind of key. Anybody that's familiar with logic apps knows that we have, I think, over almost 400 different logic app connectors at this point. These are part of that service. That literally includes anything from Office to Cosmos DB to ServiceNow, which is not even a Microsoft thing. These connections you can literally automate. If you can visualize it, if you can idealize, it would be nice to be able to automate this. You can absolutely do it. We have customers that do this constantly. If you go out to our GitHub repository today, the Microsoft Sentinel GitHub repository, there's a number of playbooks you can take advantage of. In the console itself, there's a playbook library. You can enable these things just kind of right off the bat, understanding that you're attempting to automate some things in a way that's going to save you time from an efficiency standpoint, right? So,
and you're able to do it also with a low code kind of tool.
Oh yeah,
so that
it's a visual designer for developing this automation, which is absolutely cool. Which we can show that, but yeah.
Yeah, you're not putting a ton of additional development time into another process. You're able to utilize this kind of point, click, and go WYSIWYG, as we like to call them, to be able to put everything together and create this automation. So Rod, I want to give you a second to get your demo up. And while you're doing that, I want everybody to remember that we are running a poll today. We've got some nice response so far, but we'd love to get some more. So if you can, head over to aka.ms/learntv, where you can go ahead and take a look at everything. And then also remember there's the Microsoft Learn module on Sentinel that you can take. And I ask you to do that maybe though after the show, because we've got a little bit more. We got about 25 more minutes of talking about Sentinel. And I think Rod is going to show us a little bit about it next. So Rod, I'm going to bring up your screen.
Okay.
You're probably going to want to just bump up the font size a bit.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. How's that?
I think that's a little bit. Yeah, I think that's perfect right there.
Right there. All right. Excellent. Yeah, I was going to say, don't go away yet. As anybody that has ever attended a Microsoft conference or session knows, demos tend to blow up. So don't miss the fireworks, right? So stay on this.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I've had that done several times. And though it's embarrassing, it's endearing. We're just like you. This is the Microsoft, this is the Azure portal. Okay, so we're going to start here. What I want to do, again, we're not going to deep dive into literally everything within Microsoft Sentinel. That would take days. I want to keep focused on what our topic is for today, and that is the efficiency piece, right? Mm-hmm. There's so much that has been mindfully architected and developed and engineered into Microsoft Sentinel to make it not those other things, right? To enhance the capability so customers can use this right off the bat. They can use the capability right off the bat. As soon as you stand it up and enable it, it just goes out and starts looking at your stuff and telling you, what it found. So that's pretty awesome, right? When you think about it from the other tool perspective, the majority of those have specific architecture. They need specific requirements for servers and storage and things like this that have to be maintained by an operations person. And a lot of time, unfortunately, some of the customers I've worked with who have those shared responsibilities, not only do they have to detect and monitor security and investigate, security issues within their environment, they also have to maintain that structure and that architecture and that, that whole organization for that tool, which is kind of sad. We're in 2022. Absolutely. You shouldn't have to rely on that stuff, right? Shouldn't have to do your own maintenance. So what I want to do, I have this is my own personal demo environment. So I have my workspace set up already. I'm going to not start there. I'll probably jump into there in a minute. But what I wanted to absolutely do while we're doing this, to just show you that, with Microsoft Sentinel, efficiency literally starts, right, just as soon as you stand it up. So I have this log analytics workspace that I have right here. And I'll talk through as this is working. I'm going to go ahead. This is how easy it is and how quickly it works to stand up Microsoft Sentinel. So it's going to take a little, check that out.
There we go.
Whereas the other tools, you got to stand up a server, you got to do this. Even some of those tools have their own cloud resources, but you have to call the vendor and say, here's my data requirements. I need this, I need this. Oh, I forgot. Okay, we need more data storage. It takes a long and drawn out effort just to get it stood up. Microsoft Sentinel in this environment is stood up that quickly. There's some things obviously that we want to do after we get it stood up. And that really opens the door to talk about some other efficiencies that we have that are built into Microsoft Sentinel. Going back to that, that image that you showed up, those 4 pillars of things that we must absolutely do with this product, connecting that data. That has been historically for customers one of those nightmare scenarios, right? Figuring out what the data is, where the log files are, how to get it to our tool for the tool to be able to react and enact on that data to show us what's going on in our environment. We have made it so absolutely easy. And I'm going to jump to one of those first parties, Microsoft 365 Defender. Right? I want to jump to one of those first parties just to show you how easy it is in most cases to configure and stand up data for Microsoft Sentinel. So I've come into this, what we call a data connector. These data connectors are really just little buckets of efficiency, right? Data connectors contain things like parsers for the data. So they know what the data looks like. They know how to act on the data. They know how to look at the data and tell you what's in there. They also know how to connect to that data and keep that connection live and tell you when it fails. There's a number of other pieces of collateral that come with this to make it even more efficient for you. I want to show you here real quick how absolutely simple it is to connect this, right? So this is connected by default. This is Defender. I want to connect Defender for Office 365. All right. I click that, which gives me email events, email URL info, the attachment info, so I can dig down into my email stuff. All right. I click that checkbox. I click Apply Changes. And guess what? I now have connected Office 365 Defender to my Microsoft Sentinel environment. It is absolutely just that easy. When you think about how you do that from a competitor's system, you have to access the API. You have to pull that data in either on-prem or to someone else's cloud. You have to make sure that the data is there. You have to make sure that it's parsing correctly, because that has to happen in that tool, right? You have to then enable rules that look at that data to tell you what's in there, right? So there's this whole long drawn out thing. And if that connection fails, well, then you have to go and do that troubleshooting yourself. Microsoft Sentinel is intelligent enough, using some of the components that we have in here, to even tell you stuff like that. See, I can see that data is flowing here very shortly. Look at that. Data is already flowing from the email events and everything like this. You can see that right there, right? Pretty
sure.
cool.
I have a question about the infrastructure aspect of using this. So if I am running something to build my applications through CI/CD, is there a way to be able to take build logs, like for GitHub Actions or from Azure Pipelines, and be able to import those build logs in here so that we can actually audit what's going on there, the versions of, say, NPM modules, things like that?
Yep. So understand too that these things you see here, I call these data connectors. We have a lot. We have a lot of data connectors. These were developed to make it as absolutely easy for our customers to connect their stuff. There's something for BlackBerry. There's the Cisco stuff. It's pretty much just click, click, click. If you have something that there's not a data connector for, Microsoft Sentinel absolutely supports all of the industry standards, from common event formats, Syslog, whatever it takes to get the data here. So however your data needs to function, however it needs to be sent to this log analytics workspace, it's absolutely easy to do it. And if more customers are doing that, whatever that thing is, most likely you're going to find a data connector released for that, right? So you can connect anything from anywhere. One of the things, and you brought this up, that kind of reminded me, I wanted to kind of discuss this as well. I mentioned this earlier, that Microsoft Sentinel is built on some existing services. One of those is our log analytics service, or log analytics workspace. This is our little data bucket where the data flows into, right? For those customers that aren't using Microsoft Sentinel, still using some of those legacy tools, you have to maintain your storage. If you get 1,000 switches in, right, brand new switches that you have to swap out your switches, or maybe you're adding them over the weekend and you've deployed those, guess what? Every switch introduces one new log, right? So now you have thousands of new logs that need to go somewhere. If you're still using those old tools, you have to determine what your data requirements are. You have to build it out. If your provider has a cloud of their own, you have to call the provider up and say, okay, we need to negotiate this contract. I need more data space, right?
Okay.
Microsoft Sentinel is built on log analytics workspaces. It's an elastic data bucket in that I can send as little or as much to this log analytics workspace as I want. I don't have to call anybody up and say, guess what? I've got more data, right? It just takes or as little or as much as I want to send to it, which is absolutely fantastic. Again, you don't have to maintain that infrastructure. That infrastructure is maintained for you.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Yeah. The next thing that you do, and another area of efficiency that I want to kind of highlight, this is kind of the next step in standing up Microsoft Sentinel. I don't have any enabled here. We can go to our rule templates. I keep talking about rules, right? These rules that go out and look at the data in specific ways to tell you certain things. What's really neat about our rules, we have a multitude of different types of rules that you can enable. We have one that's a scheduled rule that you can configure and modify to go out and look at your data on a very specific schedule. You want to look at data in the last 24 hours and look at it every 24 hours. Maybe it's one of those situations where it's more critical to your environment. You can adjust that so that you get notified on it more frequently, right? Completely customizable. We also have a newer type of analytics rule called NRT, or near real time. So this analytics rule, when you enable one of these, it literally runs every single minute looking for that thing that you want it to go look for. If you feel like there's an account that's compromised within your environment, I mean, you've done the due diligence, you've looked through the data, you're like, oh my goodness, this person's tried to log in 100 times in the last 10 minutes unsuccessfully. You can set up a near real-time rule to say, yep, you're absolutely correct. You need to block this user or lock this account out because it's potentially compromised, right? Cool stuff.
And is that where playbooks kind of come into play here? Where,
Absolutely.
you know, we've got, are there ways to have these, like, you know, remediations automated right through Sentinel?
Absolutely. And I was going to, let's do less. I'll show you one of these scheduled rules. Let's go and show you exactly what you're talking about there. It's really easy to create a rule. Everything is wizard based, right? So you don't have to memorize things. It's wizard based on the MITRE ATT&CK tactics. If I go up here, there's a lot of things that I can configure here, but one of the really cool things about this is automated response. This one is O365 Attack Toolkit. Let's pretend this is something else. Let's pretend this is maybe password spray or something like that. It's in an account that's compromised. If this analytics rule goes out and finds that criteria that we're looking for, that an account we believe has been compromised because someone's attempted to use wrong password 100 times for an account, we know that that's something that we want to provide some automation against so that this one account doesn't compromise the rest of our environment. I can add that automation here. If it meets this criteria, we're just going to automatically lock this user account out. And from an analyst perspective, I don't care if it's the CEO. I don't care who it is in our environment. If this looks like this account's been compromised, I'm going to lock that account out.
Absolutely.
I'm going to send myself a notification, which we can do through the automation as well. And then I'm going to do the due diligence to make sure I didn't lock out the wrong person or I didn't do something silly. But at that point, I know for sure that my environment has been protected, right? That a potentially compromised account won't reach the rest of my environment, right? So yeah, that's where some of that automation comes in. You can add automation to literally anything that exists in here. All right. One of the other I want to kind of focus on, then we'll jump into something else.
Sure.
Is this Fusion analytics rule. This is absolutely cool. All right. So Fusion, it's one rule, but somebody told me last night how many it is. Over 100 different types of detections in it, right? It's a consolidated thing. In our machine learning, our behavior analytics at Microsoft, right? Customers that use our services, anytime they use our services, there are signals that are produced when they go to a bad website, when they open up an attachment, all those things that users do that they probably shouldn't do. Those are captured as signals. At Microsoft, we take those things, we take that intelligence and we feed them back into our systems, into our security consoles, whatever it has to be, Defender, Microsoft Sentinel. So customers can always feel comfortable and confident that what they're using from our security products is always the most up-to-date threat intelligence. So this Fusion and this ML behavior analytics that's built into Microsoft Sentinel is another efficiency piece, right? It's constantly, we're feeding this into the product, and it's automatically looking at things that you may not even thought of. It's looking at things that probably were brand new over the past 24 hours, right? Something that you didn't even know to detect. So it looks for specific anomalies and things like that. So that's actually pretty cool. You don't adjust those. It just automatically does that for you. One thing I do want to mention, and I think this is a huge thing, particularly for those customers I've worked with that use those other products. One of the biggest barriers for those products is the performance of their query language. right? So these tools, all these tools, they seem to all have their own query language, right? Unfortunately, Microsoft Sentinel is no different. We have our own query language, but it is a query language that works across all of Azure. Anything data-centric, whether it's Microsoft Sentinel, Azure Activity, Intune, Defender for Endpoint, or even Endpoint Manager, everything utilizes KQL. Microsoft Sentinel is the same way. KQL is absolutely a fantastic query language in the fact that it utilizes the power of the cloud, the compute resources, the clustering. When I look at massive amounts of data and I look for something very specific within my environment, I think there's a potential security issue. When I look for that thing, those results, particularly from a security perspective, should come back instantaneous, right? So we built this query language based on the power of the cloud to be able to perform that and perform it as it should. I've worked with a number of customers using those other tools. They were interested in Microsoft Sentinel. Took their data from on-prem, stuck it in Microsoft Sentinel. They ran their query language against their database. I ran my query from KQL against their data within Microsoft Sentinel. Mine came back within 8 seconds or less. Theirs.
And I've had. Sorry. Okay.
No, go ahead.
No.
I'm going to say some of them had SLAs for their organization where if they made a request for data, they couldn't expect it back within 3 days.
And I wanted everybody to know that there is a great GitHub repository that Rod has put together that I've got here on the screen. Must Learn KQL. Looks like it's based on a book, and there's some merch and all sorts of stuff. So it looks like you've got some examples on different queries that you can run, like here, account table query that you can have for security events.
Yeah, so I should mention, so I was probably like November. I love KQL, right? If I have downtime, I have my laptop in my lap. I'm watching a old $6 Million Man episode. I'm probably typing out KQL queries because I just love it that much. And you can see the $6 Million Man stuff behind me. It's just, we had a discussion internally. I didn't realize it, and it shocked me that KQL is a barrier for some of our customers using our products. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's so simple, it's so easy, it's so powerful. I want everybody to use KQL, or at least have some knowledge. So I kind of started that last year around November sometime. And that thing has just exploded. People are like, oh, I love it. So those examples that you see there, the book is actually kind of interesting in that I have a demo tenant that anyone can log into. And those examples, they can actually type this stuff out and look at the results themselves. The book is actually defined that way, where you take that query and you go and it walks you through typing out that query and look at the results and showing why we do these things. And it's done in a methodical way. It starts from absolutely the very beginning of KQL, why KQL is called Kusto Query Language, all the way to, and it's a continuing series. We're at chapter 11, and I expect it to go for a couple of years, to be honest. So,
really, really cool. So we got about little less than 5 minutes left, and I was curious: is there any short things you want to show us before we start wrapping up? Or
yeah, a couple things I think I want to highlight from an efficiency standpoint. Like I said, I could literally, and you probably see it already, I could talk like 2 weeks on this stuff. There's a couple new things that I think are extremely important. These exist because customers requested them. Customers have come from the other tools. They saw their own gaps. They said, hey, Microsoft Sentinel needs to be able to do this for us. All right. Mm-hmm. So one of those, we have what's called a content hub. I've talked about the data connectors, and I've talked about the analytics rules. There's other things, other pieces of collateral that we provide. What we have now is called the content hub. So when you deploy, you saw me go through and enable a data connector. You saw me go through and look at the analytics rules. I could enable those from there. There's some other things that I could do kind of on a manual perspective. Content hub gives you the ability to find whatever it is. Here's a good one. Who's been working with Log4j over the past, several months?
Yeah.
So we have this. You just literally go in here. This includes, I think it includes the analytics rules, a workbook, some hunting queries. There's a lot of collateral that comes with this. One-click install for everything. And your organization is now monitoring for that Log4j stuff, right? pretty cool. Content Hub is absolutely cool. And in relation to that, it's almost like the merch store for Microsoft Sentinel, and everything's free though. A lot of our partners, as part of our Microsoft security partnership, they create solutions that go into this Content Hub, right? So if you want to connect, let's say semantic stuff, I'm sure there's probably a semantic thing in here, right? That they've supplied. Who knows better how to connect that data and look at that data than the original vendor? They create these little marketplace things that you can enable within Microsoft Sentinel. Another thing that I want to highlight in the short time that we have, I think is absolutely important to understand how we've reacted and how we've engineered this for our customers who have asked. A lot of customers deploy a standard, DevOps pipeline. They will not deploy anything unless and that's cool. I am so happy that our customers are doing that. That's awesome. It's another piece of automation and efficiency that they're doing on their own. We have this new repositories component that's in preview within every Microsoft Sentinel console. And what this does, it does that. So you can send your Microsoft Sentinel analytics rules, even the custom ones, everything to a GitHub repository or a DevOps board, and then go to the next installation and import it so that you have, you can deploy this using that DevOps pipeline, or maybe you can update your existing infrastructure here if you want to do it that way. Customers have asked for that for like a year.
Sure.
And we've released that. We took the time and I think we've done it right. So.
Very cool. So, Rod, we're just about at the end of it, and I wanted to kind of wrap up. And before I kind of say goodbye and all that stuff, I just wanted to remind people of a few things. One, we had a poll today, and 70% of you who took the poll said, yeah, you are using a security and event management service within your IT solutions. And I think that that's super important. And then if you take a look on the right rail here, we've got all the notes for today. You can also check these in the YouTube video that you can look at. There are lots of great information that you can get to. To close up, Rod, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being part of this today, helping us understand a little bit more about how we could create efficiency within our security operations center and how we can utilize these tools to bring it all together in a single pane of glass.
Awesome. And thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff. I assume I'm the first guest of the new year, so I set the bar low for everybody else.
Wonderful. So, Rod, thank you so much for being part. To everybody watching and who were in the actual comments and chats today, thank you. You all were really, really active. I got a lot of interesting information coming in. Dark Eyes Girl says that it was a great presentation and says thank you. To everyone who watched today, I can't do this without you watching, so thank you so much. And we'll catch you next time here on Azure FunBytes. Rod, let's give everybody the big wave goodbye. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day and have a great weekend. Bye-bye now.